Meeting tonight is being recorded and televised over Zoom. First thing I'm going to read, it's going to be like a summer rerun for everybody, most of you people. The mask update. The updated CDC guidance continues to state that individuals who are fully vaccinated may, as a general matter, resume many of the activities that they engaged in prior to the pandemic without wearing a mask or staying 6 feet apart, except where otherwise required by federal, state, or local laws, rules, or regulations. In response to the recent spread of the Delta variant, however, the CDC's updated guidance does recommend that even fully vaccinated persons wear masks or face coverings when indoors or if other risk factors are present. In light of the information provided by the CDC, and in order to maximize protection of the vulnerable individuals from the Delta variant, the Department of Public Health now advises that a fully vaccinated person should wear a mask or a face covering when indoors and not in your own home. If you have a weakened immune system, or if you are increased risk for severe disease because of your age or an underlying medical condition, or if someone in your household has a weakened immune system, it is at increased risk for disease or is unvaccinated. With that, I'm going to again go through the order of business that was originally August 11th, I believe. Okay, so this is the introduction of the planning board members. Myself, John Matthews, I'm the interim chair. Jason Barroso, Madison Pixley, Heather Beatty, Christina Broder, and Joanne Fiore, our administrative assistant. The statement of authority: the planning board is established under Chapter 40A of the General Laws of Massachusetts and acts in compliance with Chapter 40A under the zoning bylaws of the town of Hamden. Chapter 41 governing the submission and approval of plots of proposed subdivisions and the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Hamden, Massachusetts. I'm going to read the legal notice now. The Hamden Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, August 11th, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the Townhouse, 625 Main Street, Hamden, Mass, on the application of 16 Summers Road, LLC, for a special permit and site plan review in accordance with the zoning bylaw, Section 5, new construction and new uses, Section 6.4.28, self-storage facility, Section 6.252, solar energy system over 2,100 square feet, and Section 6.117, water protection overlay district on a 3.47 acres located at 16 Summers Road. Parcel ID 12-039-000. Information related to this application is on file in the town clerk's office and is available for review by the public during normal business hours. For the board, Judge Robert Howarth, Chair, Hamden Planning Board, and this was published on July 22nd and July 29th in the Hamden Wilbraham Times. The reports received from other town departments and agencies. The building inspector stated his concern with regards to stormwater. The water table is known to be high in the area, and his concern would be with all of the impermeable surfaces. He stated it would have an adverse effect on the abutters if not handled appropriately. The Board of Health reported the plan does not include locations for existing wells, septic and leach fields, and or new proposed system and well. The fire department stated a Knox box is required. He asked if there is going to be an ESS at this location. The police Police chief stated there would be no issue with the storage facility from the police department standpoint. He would just like to make sure there is a clear sight of view is kept when pulling out of the roadway from this location. Any new plantings to be kept out of the line of sight of driveways. The town clerk reported that the taxes are up to date. So with that said, I have a couple of new, and again, I apologize for the inconvenience that it may have had. We had to get some new members to the board. Those members under the Mullins rule have reviewed the what was presented at the previous meeting, and there was really no evidence that has changed since that time, I believe. So with that, I'm going to ask Heather. and Christina. I have one item. Has to do with the application. It's been brought to my attention that there's a problem, or could be a potential problem with the application. So the owner that is in the owner of record in the Registry of Deeds. Okay, at the Registry of Deeds, and I think that's here, right? I don't know. Okay, so the Registry of Deeds has it as 16 Summers Road LLC. As the applicant or the owner. So Steve, you signed as the owner, correct?
Okay.
No. May I address that?
Go on.
Yeah, the application, I'm looking at it in front of me, was signed as a member manager of the LLC. So
Okay.
he's signed on behalf of 16 Summers Road LLC.
Okay, so you're on record, I think, Rafer, as the manager.
Yep, but you can have a vote of your association to authorize a member to sign, which is not something that's recorded.
Right, so he is authorized to be able to.
He's authorized to sign, and to simplify matters, I'm happy to sign the application itself as the manager now, and that would obviate any issues.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna ask, is this a copy?
And that can be the originals.
Oh, whatever,
The originals with the town clerk.
So I
So
can-
if you want to sign this, I'll
Sure.
give her a revised time sheet. Tom.
yeah, just to revise. Thank you, I appreciate that.
And just for the record, was that permission and grant of authority to signed prior to the submission of the application in June?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Rafer, if you will, in February, when you filed your, whatever with the state,
Mhm.
you were the manager at
That's
that
correct.
time. And I think what you're asking, was that in place at that time?
No, I'm asking whether whether Mr. Anwood's approval as a manager to sign the application was in place before the application was signed in June and submitted in June.
I'm not going to address attorney-client privilege communications with an adverse attorney.
Okay.
I've signed as the properly noticed manager of the LLC. That obviates any concern there is in regards to the ability to move forward. 16 Summers Road is the owner of the property, proper title to the property, and is a proper applicant.
But respectfully, it was not at the time when the application was signed, and so the application is then void at the time of the signature.
Okay, so this is gonna sound like a summer rerun again. You remember what we said last night?
I do remember what you said, but respectfully, if there's an issue,
Sorry.
if there's an issue with the application, the board does have, if there are any concerns, the board is charged with the discretion to deny the application. And for purposes of appeal, I again request that there be a vote as to the proper approach to that, and that there be a vote taken on that point for denial of the permit as it stands right now, as being void at the time of initiation.
So what you're asking is a board to vote on denial of the application. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Chair, may I just as a matter of understanding your proceedings here,
Sure.
I participate in these type of hearings all over the country, in Massachusetts, all over. My experience has been is generally boards ask the applicant to present. There's an unlimited time for the applicant to present with a dialogue with the board. At the end of that, there's an opportunity for adverse parties to voice their opposition. Generally, there's an opportunity for the applicant to then rebut or state a thing further. Usually the board closes the discussion, then you all have your discussions, whether you vote today or some other time. If that's how we're gonna proceed, that's fine. If there's gonna be some other way, I just wanna be, because I don't want to step up when he's talking. That's generally not something I'm accustomed to doing out of sheer politeness. But I just want to understand how this hearing is going to be conducted.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
And with,
We're kind of uncharted territory for us. Okay.
and with respect to this particular question, which is a procedural one that deals with the initiation and the validity of the application from its date of inception, that's the only reason why we're addressing it the way we are at the beginning of the meeting. So,
Mr. Chairman, yes.
If I could, generally speaking, when a corporation or has a board vote to authorize somebody to sign on their behalf, there's a record of it. They provide some sort of certification that a vote was taken on such and such a day for so and so to vote on behalf of the corporation. So personally, I would be satisfied with getting provided that documentation. That's something that I get normally at work to sign on behalf of my company.
right, and that was what I had requested, and that was denied on the grounds of attorney-client privilege. And so that's why,
I wouldn't expect them to have it today. But I mean,
well, in the grounds, on grounds of expediency, and again, not trying to be unreasonable or waste everybody's time, to the extent that Mr. Pellegrino wants to make a certification to the board orally and follow that up, indicating that that vote was indeed, and follow that up with proof, indicating that that vote of authority was indeed made prior to the filing of the application. That's fine. I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I'm not trying to waste anybody's time. I'd like to move forward and get this over with.
Would that be okay with you?
I have no problem with any request from the board. What I have a problem with is adverse party utilizing a proceeding to cross-examine on points that they may want to raise. If he finds that it's inappropriate, I walked in this evening and 3 minutes before the hearing, I received an envelope this thick of documents that allegedly he'd like to present. That's fine. You don't have to give me, but this issue, obviously, they've been aware of it. There was never a notice. There was never a request ahead of time, so we could have addressed it.
Understood.
So I guess I'm just trying to get procedures, because otherwise we'll be here all night if every 2 minutes. Because I don't want to get up and continue to do that. I just, out of respect for this board, I know you have a lot of matter to cover, a lot of material to cover this evening.
I think after the proceed, we're gonna. Yeah, but I think after we get this cleared up, we'll be taking an approach at your customer.
Right,
And the board's request is fine.
And respectfully, this is not new information at all. This was identified by the planning board by the Board of Selectmen to the planning board on August 30th, 2021. I believe it was also the subject of a publicly published news article. And I have copies of both of those. So to suggest that this is a new issue or a surprise is not accurate.
We haven't had a meeting since that time, so it hasn't been publicly.
And I will state that I just saw that on Monday. And again, I apologize to everybody here, okay? I might have missed it in the communications, I don't know. But like I said, I just saw it on, I'm gonna say it was either on Monday or in that time frame over the weekend. I was away over the weekend, so I can't tell you the exact day that I did see it. But
And I can produce copies of the August 30th letter as well as the publication.
that's fine. So, for a matter of procedure, I'd like to move ahead, okay? If you would send
And I
us.
said, that's fine. Yeah,
So if you would. Do you want to vote on it?
I'm requesting that certification,
Okay,
sure.
that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we allow the hearing to continue based on the presumption that the applicant will be providing certification that a vote was taken, allowing Mr. Andrew to sign on behalf of 16 Summers Road LLC.
Prior to the date of the application being.
Prior to the date of the application being submitted.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With that, clear as mud. Let's move on. Okay. The applicant's presentation, if you would, do you have somebody to make that presentation?
Actually, I will start. I'm going to give an overview. Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Ray Pellegrino. I represent 16 Summers Road LLC, the owner of the site in question, the proposed development for a storage facility as outlined in our application. You have before you, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the site, just a street view of the site. On the site consists of 3.47 acres. The proposed development is approximately 1 acre, consisting of 283 units, which is depicted here on this diagram. Now, as an overview, we should start with the premise that the town has taken the position that it is not in supporting additional water usage or sewer system for other uses at this site, which curtails the development of this site and other sites in the area. So we came about deciding to utilize this property for this purpose in a collaborative effort with understanding the town's needs and desires, and specific requests that I received from members of the select board as well as citizens to preserve the house, which is circa 1800 home, approximately 1,784 square feet. Obviously, there are other uses we could do there. We could use it for motor vehicle sales. We could use it for a variety of uses with higher traffic count, more impact to the residents and more impact to the neighborhood. Our goal was to try to find a use that was conducive to the site while preserving the home, the aesthetic values of it, and having little to no impact on surrounding residents, commercial abutters on both sides. Now, might as well talk about the white elephant in the room now, right out of the gate. Clearly, you have another petition for a similar project adjoining it. This, as you're aware, was all one piece of property at one time. As with any area that develops over time, properties are parceled off, they're sold, and there's different uses coming about. Now, we're very proud to say that this is a environmentally green project, which is going to be state of the art. I'm not going to compare it with respect to any other projects you may have heard, but I'm going to talk specifically about what we envision here and why. There are a number of key components that we think are appropriate to develop this property, which we understand is within a water protection overlay district. We're very mindful of that and utilize and having this type of use for storage, which is a very low impact use on both the environment and the neighbors. Again, we're going to keep the circa 1800 home, even though we're not required and we can demolish it. It's not on the register. We agree it has historic significance. And I invite you all to look up my background. It's publicly documented. I've won more awards for historic renovations than probably anybody in Springfield, and have won award after another for doing that. We strongly believe in keeping that. We also think it's important because it keeps within the character of the surrounding areas so that you can have this commercially viable purpose, and your bylaws specifically speak to that in section 6. The purpose of the bylaw is to have commercially viable sites. And in order for us to do that, obviously there has to be some change. So while we all recognize change is difficult, we believe that this is a change that could be a positive impact for the community for a number of different reasons. The next point I'd like to inform you of is out in front here, there are two, you can see them here, these are, I call them significant trees. When we talk about significant trees, they have a diameter of such a level that they've been growing long enough that they're significant, will maintain. More importantly, though, in the back, there's 3 significant trees located here, 1, 2, 3, that are very significant, one of which is a 75-year-old beech tree. And we've gone out of our way to design this site so that we retain that natural landscape that's been there and it's developed over a long period of time. So it's always important to me when I look at any development, when I'm driving down the street, I go here, the streetscape, this is how it's going to appear. This is actually with the fencing after proposed development. I'll show you another picture, it's a little bit different, but that's what you'll see from the street. So you'll see the home with the trees and bushes along the front of it, which I would suggest is aesthetically pleasing, which again, if you go to your purpose and you go to your 4 requirements and your requirements, that's specifically what's asked for. Now, when I told you it's green, why did I say that? Well, one of the things we'll do is a state-of-the-art, environmentally sound permeable asphalt. And just so we set the record clear, that is best practices from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. That is deemed, that is what the direction they want you to go. It is documented best practices, and that's why we're doing it. And for a whole variety of other reasons, which I'll get into in a moment. The second thing is that we're proposing solar, which is a renewable, as you know, energy product, which would go on top of all of the facilities. And why is that so important? Because again, there's no adverse impact to the land whatsoever, but yet we're saving emissions, we're creating energy for the community in the area, which and I won't bore everybody with the last 10 years of documented legislation on the movement for this type of use. Those are what I would talk about the key points as to why this type of use was decided for here, aside from the fact that all the statistics point to that storage is on a demand in this area and it will be on a demand for the foreseeable future. So those are the practical reasons why we looked at it. When we go through the criteria, and I'm gonna go through them in points so you can follow me, and at the end, and I have with me, and I apologize for not introducing them, Carlos Nietos from Berkshire Design, who's our landscape architect, and with him is Greg Henson, who's a civil engineer, who will talk specifically about permeable asphalt and about water passage through it and alternative uses and why this is the most appropriate use for the site. Carlos will address many of the other technical aspects. I also have an expert who happens to be my much older brother, Joey Pellegrino, who will talk to you about the solar components and the construction components as operator of a solar division, which we own. We design, build, and own and operate over $50 million in solar projects. We've done them all phases, car mounts, buildings, rooftops, and some here obviously in this community. With regards to construction, he's the president of Voss Construction, which will be the construction company that will develop this and work on the plan if we go forward. So if there are technical questions, I would call upon one of them to respond if I can't answer it. With regards to the way I broke it down is attractive and viable commercial use, and that's what you talk about in your planning boards. So again, this is a White House, and I'm going to tie in some factors, and if you bear with me, you'll see. Sometimes you say, "Why is he talking about that?" You'll understand. I'll bring a full circle of different points. This house, and you see here, it has a black door. Right now, it doesn't have a black door, and that's going to show you why. The reason why that's going to become black ties in because now this becomes lost in the backdrop with the black fencing and historic. When you go to historic colors and black and white and making it presentable, this is specifically designed something that's simple. That's how much detail has been paid to this project to tie it in. So when you come along, visually is aesthetically pleasing. Excuse me. The storage facility itself is 50 feet from the road, and that's important with a 2% decline in topography. So what that tells us, and you don't have to be a mathematician to understand this, But if you are looking at from the street and you have a 6-foot high fence with arborvitae in front of it, your visual view of what's behind it is essentially negligible because the decline drops down, and I'll get to the height of the structure and what have you. The setbacks on the side, and if you look along, let's get my bearings here for a moment. You'll look along here, so we're here on Summer Street. There are 2.5 residential neighbors here. The property is not, it's depicted square, but it actually goes out on both ends. The setback is more than 50 feet for the residential neighbors. There's a veterinarian clinic here. The setback is slightly less there. Otherwise, there's ample setback to any residential neighbors. With respect to the fence, I've talked a little bit about it. We propose a black fence along the front, and the reason that is because, again, it's tying with the historic look of it and in the landscape to make it aesthetically pleasing. Could it be another color? If the board had some desire, we're not opposed to it. We think, and we spent a lot of time. Fortunately, we also have a design component that we work with one of our companies, and this was the color that we came up with that was best for this type of use. The next thing we talk about is I talked about them already, the arborvitae plants going along the front, which gives it the natural landscape. And initially, you'll see in some of the plans you have, the fence went up closer to the road. We purposely moved the fence back so it runs parallel to the home. So now you're looking at like a regular house with a fence that runs to it and the gate opening just after the home, so that it would look no different than another house on the street where you enter to park, go to your garage and go back there. And that was a modification we made after, every day it's like you're building a house. You think of something new, you can tweak a little better and try to improve it. And that's our goal, to get something that's pleasing to not only this board and community, but also to the neighbors on both sides. The entrance of the gate is about 24 feet, and that's important when I say gate driveway going in. And there was a comment made about one-way traffic. We're happy to do two-way traffic. We have it 16 feet, we can make it 24. 24 allows double passage either way. That was designed just to control. We like better controls, but if the board wants both ways, I read the report from Ty and Bonds, and as you'll see, I'll address some of those points, and at the end, I'll specifically go through those comments with you, or any comments of concern. I can tell you though, from the outset, there's nothing on the Ty and Bond report that is problematic from our perspective as the proposed developers. I heard different issues with regards to the mechanisms of the gate, things of that nature, and that wasn't in the report, but along the way, again, those are all things we're open to. If there's specific things the board wants, we want to be cooperative and make this collaborative. And the next thing we talk about is access and traffic. So just as a start, all of the data that Mr. Nietos will follow up with if you have specific questions on traffic is from the Institute of Transportation Engineering, which is the nationally recognized institute. In addition, I've consulted with a traffic expert we've used in a number of different areas. And I can tell you that the traffic use of this is far less than the prior use. And we have some examples that Mr. Nietos can go through with you. But we're starting off with a decreased amount of traffic from the prior use as a nursery. So we should pause for a minute and think about that. This use decreases traffic impact, doesn't increase it, doesn't make it the same, actually decreases it. And it's substantially less than traffic of many of other developments that could go here without the need for extension of any special permits or any approvals from the various boards. So we need to be mindful of when we're balancing any land development, what could go there, what is the proposed use, and how does it work? And I really want to stress that because I think it's lost in some of the media I've read along the way. Now, the substantially lower traffic use, this goes specifically to your table 6, and we'll tie that in with Mr. Nietos later on. The interior site of the site, and I want to go here for a minute, the height of it, and I said I'm going to tie things back in. The height is 10 feet, okay? And this is important because these are not peaked buildings, and that's 10 feet with the solar, assuming the solar is approved. So if this were to be approved in the solar, not for some reason, the height would be lower. Now, why is that important? Again, we're on the street 50 feet back with a 2% decline over a 50 feet period with a 6-foot high fence and arborvitae looking 10 feet. So we only got 4 feet as we start. Now we're down to 2 feet. You're essentially it's going to be very difficult to see anything. If you're walking Perhaps if you're driving, highly unlikely you're gonna see anything. So if you're talking about aesthetics, that's why we spend so much time and attention to making sure we maintain these trees, we put the black fencing and we put the arborvitae to give it that natural look to the community. The interior color, this is important, and the color of these storage units is hunter green with bronze. And we designed that again for aesthetic purposes to tie in with the natural landscape, to be something that even if you do see it, you're going to see a nice hunter green colored structure. And the lights, this is important. I'm going to talk about lighting in a moment, but there is 0 lights off property line. 0. There's 0 light emission off the property line. What I mean by that, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, if I went around here and Mr. Nietos will show you the graph, and it's all been scientifically proven. There's 0, we go all around this whole property. There's not 1 degree of light that comes off of that property, which is important because there's no adverse lighting impact to anyone surrounding the property. Now, parking and circulation, I'm always concerned about that, which I'm assuming the board is. What is the access like? We've designed these to be 30 feet wide. What does that allow? It allows a fire truck to come in, access, and move around within this property if they're ever a concern, which is something which is more costly to us to do, but we felt important. So it allows circulation, and if you want to know more about that, Mr. Nietos can talk about turn angles and the scientific basis of all that. But I can represent you, and the design will prove that they're 30 feet in nature. Now, the pavement. I understand there's been a lot of questions about permeable and impermeable asphalt. Obviously, this is permeable asphalt here. And you see, I don't know if you can see it from there, but we have a dividing line here like this. This is impermeable asphalt right here. And there's a reason for that, because there's a foundation to this house, and there's different requirements that make this more appropriate for the use here as opposed to here. I've talked before about best practice from Mass DEP. The only areas that aren't permeable are the areas I just identified for you, as well as this one little spot out here that if the solar were to go, it's a small transformer, none different than we see in many locations located on the ground, that you're allowed to do decorative bushing, shrubbery on some sides of it. The general concept, and I'm going to give you my generic non-expert view of how permeable asphalt works. In my view, it's not even close. The advantage is the permeable over impermeable. We just completed a 90,000 square foot permeable parking lot in the city of Lowell for a public charter school that was located along the Merrimack River. And that's why it was done, for those concerns. And that's been going for about, the last phase we finished is about 5 years now. The advantages are that, and Mr. Nietos will explain to you, the type of conditions that exist underneath, the water flows right through. It doesn't accumulate, it doesn't stay on there. This concept of sand clogging things, you don't use sand on it. You use magnesium chloride, which is one of the most desired types of uses to melt salt if you want to do that. And you can vacuum it. And we have a maintenance plan, which I'll talk about at the end, which is both a landscape and an operation and maintenance plan. And so you're aware, we operate a tremendous number of properties with a full maintenance team, not only a landscape team, a plowing team, all within the area. We're born and raised in the next town over. This is not foreign to the majority, but we operate these in other parts of the state with the same team. So they'll be all tied in, and I'll explain that. Here you'll see, and I just want to deal with this quickly. There's a dumpster location here, and we've described in great length what, if we had a dumpster, what it would be like, and it would be wooden with metal enclosing gates. It's approximately 30 feet dumpster. We don't desire to have a dumpster. That's only at the board's option. It's our preference not to have one. So if the board has a concern about that, we're happy to remove that from the plan and not have it. And if anything, that just allows more access for additional parking, which we don't need. The 5 parking spaces, including the 1 ADA space, meets the requirements clearly under the code. It's a very low impact parking use, very low traffic use. So as I'm going along, I'm trying to give you the things that we need and the things that are optional that we're happy to let the board weigh in and give us direction on what it wants. Now let's talk about the lighting. I've alluded to a little bit. So there's going to be approximately 28 low impact units with 3 poles. The 3 poles are defined in these areas roughly here and here. And Mr. Nietos can give you the specifics. Those, I believe, are 15 feet in height. Aside from that, all of the units allow they light within and down, so they're not on every unit. They're spaced along it. There's lighting the entire interior of the area, so there's not one area. And I'll jump ahead for a moment because it's tied into our security system, and we have 9 to 12 cameras which are designed to give viewing of the entire site at all times for security purposes, and I'll talk about that at the end. The lighting is way above my pay grade, but I can tell you that it's 0 lighting off-site, it's dark sky compliant, it's full cutoff, and it's low glare. If you research it, you have those three things. That is the optimal lighting you can do for a site. The security system I talked to you a little bit about, and it's tied in with the lighting system, which is all motion detected. So you're going to have essentially a very, lack of a better word, dark site during dark hours with minimal light. Will not be seen by neighbors or people on the other side, certainly from the vantage point of where they are. And will be only activated, obviously, if there was an issue or some problem. Hours of operation, I probably should address this in the front end, but I'll talk about operations at the end, would be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And again, we're flexible on that. We think that's a reasonable time frame. But I can't tell you that if it were a half hour earlier on one end, it's going to make a major difference to us. With regards to the solar, and I'm going to address this fairly quick because I understand there's a whole other proceeding for this, but if there are specific questions on solar, we can deal with it. The concept we need to understand from the outset, this is solar on top of structures. This is not ground mount. I literally received a package 3 inches thick, and the first thing I saw was that we're violating the solar requirements in the city. We're very clear on them. In fact, I've appeared before your boards on them for other sites. This is attached to a structure, clearly complies with the requirements of this town. And I'm happy to address any questions if we get there. I understand there's another proceeding for that, so I assume the majority of the focus will be on this first component, but I can address that. These roof mount solar systems will all again be located down here. We're not requiring any new electric and utilities coming into the site. They're already come into we call it the house structure, which is used for the office use for the site. The transformer, I told you about that small one there, and I can't give you the specifics on that because we don't know yet. You don't know until you go through the regulatory process, and then we deal with utility, and then the utility gives us the specifics, and then we put the transformer. And there's a number of variables, which is, we could talk for 3 days about that, but that's, it's only 400 kW. This is not a tremendous size solar site. But it's important because what we're trying to do is make this 100% environmentally green site. So we're tying in the permeable with that. Now let's talk a little bit about the asphalt interior. There's a permeable asphalt we talked about, and there's been some mention about where if there's an easement for the location of our septic, which is off-site on the thing, and we're working on that, but we can relocate the septic on-site if that's a requirement. It will not violate any of the conditions with regards to the number of feet it needs to be from the permeable site or everything of that nature. Obviously, it's far easier for us to deal with it on the prior side. We think we'll work that out, but should that be an issue or requirement, it's something we can absolutely deal with. What is important though is there's 2.5 neighbors down here. There, and I don't have apologize, I don't have a streetscape for you, but if you take my representation, the sites go like this in a vertical fashion. Their solar is their septic is 150 feet on the front side of their properties, all 3 of them from our site approximately. The well, I'm reversing it too, excuse me. So I think that's important. So what we're trying to demonstrate, there's no, even if there were some type of runoff, it's got to come over 50 feet just to get to the property line, then 150 feet from there. I mean, it's not conceivable. I talked a little bit about our landscape plan, our operations plan. The landscape plan would include obviously maintaining the front area, the green area. The operations plan would include maintaining the units, but more importantly, the permeable asphalt vacuuming routinely. Generally, the standard is 1 to 4 times a year, depending upon usage. This is a low impact site. That's the general overview. Now, with specifics, what I wanted to do is take the tie and bond report. And rather than me taking all of your time, because I'm sure you've all read it as we have and gone through it, if the board has specific ones, please let us know and we'll address those. And I will ask our experts to explain anything further you need to hear from, especially as it relates to the permeable asphalt, as it relates to the lighting, as it relates to traffic flow, anything of that nature.
I would probably suggest I'm looking at the September 20th letter.
Yes,
The majority of these comment has been addressed as the
Right.
response, so.
there was only a few that were relatively open and some that had suggestions, which I try to address them as a whole. You're not opposed, but we can walk through them if you want.
My preference would just be to go one by one, the ones that.
Okay.
That time bond has suggested need additional information.
Okay.
I have,
So number 2 is the one I addressed regarding the easement issue. So I think I've addressed it unless you have further questions.
No, I mean, we'd, as they suggest, we want to have an easement plan, proof of recording and execution.
Or an alternative, what I was, or
Or
onsite. We have no issue with that. That's appropriate and we have no problem. All right, number 4 and 5 have been addressed. Number 6 will be the next one. This is just talking about signage. We recommend the board consider a condition of approval requiring generally that the construction level drawings be provided. We obviously would do that, and that's something we always provide, so that's not an issue. That's just a request that we have, that those are provided. I assume that's what the board wants.
Yes,
Okay.
that's certainly going to be needed before.
To the building department.
Yeah, before issuing a building permit.
Right. And that's standard in many communities. We don't have an issue with that. Number 7, that's been addressed. Number 8, which is they recommend you consider a condition for approving requiring applicant to provide turning movements dimensions to the fire department. And we have no issue with that whatsoever. And I explained the 30-foot, so we're happy to do that. In fact, I think that the fire department will be pleasantly surprised with the radiuses and what's available. So that's not an issue for us. So we have, we can keep a record of this. We have what do we have, 2 and 6? 6, I'm sorry, 6 and 2 and 6. 2, 6, and that's 8. 2, 6, and 8. 6, 8. Okay, and then number 9 has been addressed. Number 10's addressed. 11's addressed. 12's addressed. 13, that's the 16. That's the issue I talked about. The gate entrance is 16 foot. So if the board wants to expand, I saw some people nodding heads to both ways. That's fine. 24 feet. If that's what the board's requests, we're happy to do that. That's number 13. Next one is the 13 is talking about the site plans don't depict where the delineation, clear delineation is between permeable and impermeable. I defined it here and we're happy to give a plan, but just to make, it's actually a very simple property line like this. So I'm not sure if everybody gets.
I think it just got lost. I think it just got lost in the gray, to be honest with you, because it's on sheet L6.
Okay,
It's just the shading isn't easily distinguishable from the permeable.
Okay.
Shading.
If there's a line delineated, we'll definitely make it clear or darker color so you can see it.
It looks like the asphalt is clarified by crosshatch.
Right, just the
Like,
crosshatch doesn't stand out very well, so I think it's probably just something that. It's
okay, so then 15, we recommend the board consider condition approving regarding general that the construction level drawings be provided. This is regarding the electrical infrastructure. We have no problem. The units are not lit, but as I explained, there is lighting on the ends and inside of every few to provide lighting, so we're happy to do that. That's part of what we would normally do in the building department. So that's 15. Then 16 ties in with 15. It's those looking for the additional information regarding that. And it refers back to 15, so we're happy to do it again.
In the photometric plan is included on the set that you have with you, with I think the panel. It's the one with a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
It shows all the numbers outside of the property line to be 0 and anything that's inside.
Basically.
I don't know how to read that.
Okay, basically, and if you will.
I can help you.
You want Mr. Nietos to explain it to you?
Good evening, I'm Carlos Nieto from the Berkshire Design Group. I'm one of the principals and partners in the office. What you see in the photometric plan, a series of, first of all, at the bottom, there's what's called a lighting schedule. So it tells you which lights are going where. So that's where it talks about 3 posts and then the 28 wall packs, or the lights that go on the actual structures. To the right of that, there's examples of cut sheets. We can provide even more information if needed. For those two, they're again dark sky compliant, full cutoff, and look very low glare. And what you're seeing on the plan here is everywhere where you see an SW1, that's a wall pack. So we are not putting wall packs in every one of these buildings. This is designed by a lighting designer, and what they are trying to achieve is safe lighting, but not too much lighting. So they want to minimize the number of light receptacles, but providing still a safe area. So for the most part, what's considered safe is about a little bit 1 foot candle. It's kind of the safe area. So you'll see that within the site, we are all within 2 to 1 foot candles. Some areas might be a little less, like 0.7 as you get to a close to a door, but that's still enough. And the circles or the ellipses that you're seeing, that's the light spread. So that's what each one of those light emits. One thing I want to point out is that all our lights are facing into our property and into the lanes. Nothing is going outside of the lanes. No doors face any of the abutting properties. So all the doors are facing into the project. What you're seeing at the property line and behind these, it's very clear that because we have all our lighting on the front, it's not lighting the back. And that provides us to have 0 foot candles at the property lines. Also, we have plenty of setback, plus the buildings are part of that full cutoff, if you want to call it. It's cutting off all the light on the back. So there's no light coming out from the back. It's all light within the property. And as Riker mentioned, we are using a dim system that's going to be selectively dimming some and turning off some. So you won't even have all the lights on. You'll have some of them and they will be dim. And as somebody moves in, then those lights start to light up. They don't all light up. They light up as you go by each one of these. So in addition to all the 2 green initiatives that we're doing with the permeable asphalt and with the solar, these are all LED type lightings, low voltage and very low energy consumption, because again, we have a dimming system. So we're keeping the consumption of light really, really low. So it's another aspect of it that makes it more green. On the entrance, so those are the lights on the structures. Then at the entrance, we have 1 light right next to the gate. That's a pole, and that is not facing any of the residential. It's only on that corner where it's just closer to the street. And then we have another post that lights half of our parking area. Then we have a last post that is lighting the area where the parking is and if required, a dumpster area, which we want to light to create safety. So the existing house has some lights on them, so we haven't really modeled those because those are small lights for the residential. So it's not like this is gonna be a black hole at the house, obviously, there's gonna be some safety lights on the house. But for the most part, this whole area is gonna be very dim during night until somebody actually needs to come in. And then secondly, that works as security. As you know, we want to have having some light there when people are trying to come in or are there, that's going to provide security and safety for the site. If there's any questions or anything
So
else.
SL1, SL2, and SL3.
You got it.
Poles.
Those are going to be pole mounted, and it's the picture on the left.
Those are, is it 15 foot?
Yes, 15.
15-foot poles.
Yep.
And those are also motion sensor and
Exactly the same.
photovoltaic, basically.
The idea again is to more than likely, as a lighting designer, finishes his design, more than likely these are going to be dimmed more than likely all the time, and then there's going to be some of these that will be dimmed and the other ones are going to be just turned off.
And the remainder of the lighting for the entire site is wall packs. What height are those wall packs going to be?
They will be under the eave. So if we're talking about a 9.5 foot building with whatever we have for the extra 6 inches for the solar, we will be basically at about 8 feet. One also advantage the house with LED lights, and this is pretty much standard technology now. Maybe 10 years ago it was like this special thing, but these lights, the LED lights, have become so good. They can project each one of these LEDs to the right location, and that's how they determine the light throw. So you can have a light throw that's like this, so it lights this area, but they can have it so it's shaped in a different way. So each one of these will be designed so that it maintains the light inside the area.
Just one question on the grid pattern.
Yes.
How far apart is, if I'm looking at each numerical representation, is it, go ahead.
So if you look at, we have the lane, so, and I want to just clarify this, we have 30 or 29.5 feet on the main lanes on either side, and then we have 25 feet on each one of these lanes, which are like pretty big, definitely two-way traffic types areas. So if you think about it from this distance to this distance, you have about 40 feet or 30 feet. So every 30 feet, you would have a light, but it's every other building as you come into the project.
You said they're dark sky, so they don't emit light.
No emit light, yeah, exactly. Dark sky compliant, they're full cutoffs, so that's why they're very flat LEDs and they're very specific on where they throw their light. Also, the height of these are low enough that, again, glare and those types of situations, we don't foresee an issue with that.
So after your proposed 10 o'clock, will the lights go off totally, or you will have some lights on?
That's part of the management. My feeling is that what they should do is have some of these lights, not all of them, but some of them being dimmed down quite significantly, so that you're gonna have maybe half of the light that they produce right now. That keeps it lit enough that's safe for security purposes, but it's dark enough that it just doesn't cause an issue. We've had several projects like that. One of them, Sunderland Elementary School, where we did we worked with the school and we did a retrofit. And basically they have a system of poles, and as you drive, each one of the poles, they're very dark, and then as you keep going, they start lighting up a little bit, and the ones that you pass start dimming. So you can set it up in very different ways. It's a smart system.
So you want to continue, that was, he was addressing 15 and 16, and I think it also addressed number 19 for you as well. Let's take a look at that to be sure.
No, 19.
I mean, not 19,
16
16,
and I believe 15.
15, 16, and 15, 16, and 20, excuse me. The light pole fixtures and the light pole base. 19 was the one I was going to address, I'm sorry. So it's 15, 16, and 20, which just kind of went out of order. The lighting issues. And then I would go back 17, 18 are both addressed. So that will leave us 19 to address next.
So
We've done 15, 16, 17, 18 are addressed. 19 we're doing now, but 20 has been addressed because that's the lighting issue.
asphalt should be placed as flat as possible and function appropriately.
What I was gonna bring up there, which I thought was important is, and this is your independent consultant agreeing that permeable asphalt is appropriate for this site. And they said, we recommend the area of traditional asphalt includes spot grades to ensure appropriate drainage to avoid areas of ponding and potential freezing. We agree with that because we don't want a problem with our foundation, so we have no issue with that.
And at this point, we don't have those spot grades, but we'll definitely provide them. I can give you an overview of where we think things are gonna be draining to, because most of it is gonna be draining into the permeable asphalt. That's what
We'll need to see that. I have some questions on permeable asphalt, but let's just get. through
Perfect.
the letter first.
Yeah.
and we can
Okay, you want to go
address-
through the letter first, then come back to
We'll go
that?
through the letter
Perfect.
first, get all the information out there,
Okay,
That's fine.
and then we can. the
Okay.
board-
yeah, and you'll be addressing that. Yeah. Our civil engineer will address those issues when we're ready. Okay. So that would be 20. So then that brings us to 21. That's the conditional approval of the recommendation. So that goes back to 15. So it's tying 2021 back to 15. That's the security kiosk we were talking about. So our lighting, security is all tied together, and that's all part of the plan that would be submitted to the building department. Essentially, their recommendation is asking for a full electrical plan with security kiosk details. We're happy to do that. And one thing, when Mr. Nietos was responding, the security expert we consulted did suggest that some of the lights stay on, so it's not completely black during nighttime. That's part of the SMART program, and that's all computerized now. And we just did that on the site.
I'm sure we'll probably.
Delve into that,
detail
yeah.
on that When we get to that point.
Sure.
So I guess 22 would be. 22 would be construction level drawings. Just same comment as a
Yep.
number of previous ones.
23 is just the parking spaces, and they agree that 5 parking spaces is adequate for the infrequent use of the property. That's the second line of the
Mr. Chairman,
recommendation.
is that the parking spaces, does that require a waiver from the board?
It
It will require a waiver from the board.
Yep. Order of condition.
Yep. There was a question on the comment regarding natural heritage.
I can answer that quickly. Like I said in the previous comment, that there was a FEMA and an NHESP question. Both of those were typos. They were just former, from the formatting for an older document. And when I answered, I mistakenly put, again, the same answer for the FEMA. It is not, there's no FEMA flood area here. There's no National Heritage of Endangered Species area here at all. So that's clear.
So I'm on number 4.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
Final limits of permeable asphalt. grading detail. So Ty and Bond's requesting the defined limits of the permeable asphalt, which is appeared to just be close shading that isn't easily recognizable. So that'll, if you guys can straighten that out before we
For sure.
finalize this, and then a grading detail, which we just discussed for the traditional
Asphalt.
And I know, just so it's clear on, I know that it was hard to read on the plan. There's a black line that kind of delineates it, but we'll definitely make it clear. This area that Bylaw is asking us to be permanent, normal asphalt, it's because this here is the location of the well. And we put 100-foot buffer around that. We also looked at the septic, 50 feet, but that gets encompassed by the well. We also looked at the distance from the building, so that's why we end up with that area right there. Just that's the answer.
trying to get through this. I apologize for the
I'll
day.
take
No,
your
no
time.
problem.
Oh, so this is requesting, I'm not sure I understand this. Tom. So, have you looked at this one, John?
Are you on the last one?
I'm on,
No,
yeah,
no,
I'm on
no,
four.
Still on 4?
I'm on 4, trying to understand. Oh, I guess they're saying if they're gonna need to review grading detail to determine if the stormwater analysis is still
Correct.
Exactly. It's referring back to those spot grades at next to the parking area.
I should have let you do that. I know the stormwater.
Yeah, it's a little confusing because they're not in corresponding order, so like one goes back.
So yes, obviously we'll have to have them take a look at the grading detail.
And what they're asking there is, they just want to make sure that we have those so that they can tell where the water's
Yep.
going. So if we need something extra, then we will provide it.
Yeah.
We'd say that we don't need anything extra. We know that it will work, but we will
Yeah,
provide
they'll
those
need
spot
to-
grades.
They'll need to take a look at.
They're gonna need it.
Yeah, no, for
No,
sure.
no, he means if, once they review it, if they feel that we need to add something else.
Yeah.
That's what that.
And I felt like, that,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
we'll
saying we
provide,
will, that's not.
we'll provide all the spot. grades. Okay.
All 3 demolition plan. So the last comment on the review is they recommend information be provided at this time to determine if the defined limits of permeable asphalt per comment 14 and grading detail per comment 19 result in requirement to include additional storm drainage, which you guys said you'll be providing.
Correct.
Prior to issuance of any permit or any approval. Okay. All right, so we got through that. Mr. Chairman, you had some questions on the application. You wanted to, I don't want to ask questions yet.
I don't think I have any questions right now.
All right, so. Counselor,
Very succinct presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Counselor, you kept referring to another procedure for solar. Help me out there. You said there's gonna be another procedure for solar.
My meaning, part 2 decisions, I'm sorry, so we can address the solar. So, I mean, I'm happy to explain it and answer any questions. The solar, your regulations state that this is not ground mount under your regulations, and I'm not sure how else I can say it.
Okay,
I can walk through your regulations, they're rather involved, and that could take us quite some time.
no, help me out.
Okay.
What's
What's
so
your question?
the application is for solar,
Mhm.
so there's not gonna be another.
No. Maybe I apologize if that's okay. Misunderstood what I was trying to say.
So
I didn't say it right.
help me out as far as the solar, what the philosophy was, how you arrived there.
Okay, so you have You know, anytime we can utilize solar where it's, in my view, and this is someone, it's an interesting statement I'm gonna make for someone who's a proponent for solar, but where you're not visually seeing the solar panels necessarily all the time on a roof mount. So you're able to capture 400 kW in this community and essentially not see them. And not have a solar field, which is much different visually than this. So you have these attractive hunter green buildings, which we pay an upcharge for that color in bronze, with solar on top of them. So you're only talking 6 inches. So that's part of how we ride. And obviously commercially viable. We want the site to be viable. So this is another source of revenue. And it just makes sense long-term for the community and for us. And as you know, your utility companies are required under the Massachusetts and the federal regulations to have so much clean energy come on board. And this is part of that process. And that's why we have this huge push the last 10 years, both federally and Massachusetts. I'm real proud to say it's been one of the leaders in it in the entire United States. We've been way ahead of the curve. So that's how it came about. It just makes practical sense to do it here. It wouldn't make sense not to do it because it doesn't, there's no downside aesthetically, environmentally. If anything, it provides a cleaner environment. So that's how we arrived at it. With regards to the regulations, I mean, it's clear, it's mounted on a building. These are buildings, and there's one thing maybe I should explain, and a lot of people don't understand this. Generally, when you, and quite frankly, it's not my area of expertise, but when you put these in, a lot of times people think you just put them on a slab. But there's frost walls and things of that nature that are going in. So these are mounted buildings. These, and there's a whole variety of reasons why you do that, which I can have my brother speak to that. But I don't have to get into that because under your regulation under the law, these are mounted to a structure.
Okay, so if I follow what you're saying, and I'm gonna go through here per your application, okay, it's 6.252. So if I go down to table 6, 6.25.2, and what it says is solar energy systems with 2,100 square feet of panel surface area or more. So how many square feet of panel do you have?
39,000.
Geez, that's what I came up with. Okay.
Yeah, the rooftop is 39,000.
Yeah.
The panels are
Okay,
30,000.
that's okay, so taking that, if I go to section 7, which
I apologize, I don't have a copy of that.
that's okay.
complete.
I can walk it through.
And I'm happy to provide a memo to this, outline.
Yeah.
It might be easy to read, but I can answer general questions you have now.
Okay, and so section 7 is basically development of sites and locations of buildings and structures. So if I go to the solar section of it, okay, it goes into roof mounted solar energy system, a solar energy system that's structurally mounted to a roof of a building or structure. Pretty much. And what you're saying is that's a structure.
I'm sorry, what was that second section?
I'm sorry. So if I go to 7.16.2, and that's definitions.
7.612.
Yes, yeah, that's in, let me help you out. It's under the section 7 of the bylaw.
Yeah.
7.16 is the solar energy system.
Yep.
Which that's the design standards, I guess, is what I want to say. And then we have definitions, which is 7.162.
Okay.
And then I go to the applicability, which is 7.163. And this section applies to the construction and operation of large-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems. This section also pertains to the physical modifications that materially alter a type and configuration of these installations or related equipment throughout the useful life of the system, as well as decommissioning. Okay, so we have nothing for a roof-mounted large-scale system.
Bro, you just read the key words. large scale ground mount. This is not ground mount, it's not, so it's an allowed use, it's not, that only addresses ground mount in, for that type of structure, for that area. If you don't have a bylaw banning something, it's allowed by right as a matter of law. So what we're saying is this is a building structure which is allowed for this use. It's more than 2,000 square feet is not, so the ground mount requirements doesn't apply to it. I can talk more, but I mean, that's a simple answer.
No.
Yeah,
No,
why?
because it doesn't address a large scale roof mounted system. We do not have large scale roof mounted system criteria in the bylaw. You say it's roof mounted,
Right,
and we don't have that in the bylaw.
that's what I'm agreeing.
Right, you said that, right?
Right,
You agree.
what I'm saying is, it's your bylaws talk about ground mount. This is not ground mount, it's building mount.
Right.
It's a distinction without a difference, respectfully.
Hold on, let me just, so what you're saying is we don't have a definition for roof mounted large scale. We don't define it. We don't have a criteria for it.
Not that I've seen.
Right. So if I go back to tables or chapter 6. Okay.
You're talking about large scale roof mount, you're saying no definition for that.
There is,
There
is none.
Right.
There's a
Okay,
definition, there's no requirement.
There's no
I'm
requirement.
sorry, requirement.
There's, right, there's no requirement. So, in section 6, under section 6, it says any use not listed shall be construed to be prohibited.
Regarding ground mount, that's, it's defined.
We don't have roof mount large scale. We do not have.
No, I understand, but under section 6, it's defined, before that, the language you read is ground mount.
It's ground mount.
Right, so it's.
So we have only large scale ground mount. That's all we have.
Okay.
So what he's saying is under the use section.
I understand-
under the
I
use
understand.
Regulations,
Right.
it's not an allowable use.
Right, and if that's how the board, I'm telling you, I interpret that section differently. I think that's referring, because it specifically talks about ground mount, but I respectfully understand what you're saying. That's why there's two components. There's a solar component to it, a proposal, and there's a building component to it.
So with that said,
So just so I'm clear, you think the board doesn't have authority to allow this?
we have no, I'll put it to you this way. We would have the authority if we were going to condition this special permit.
Why would you say that?
Because I would put it in an order of conditions, and because it's not listed, we would look at it as a conditionable something that could be conditioned.
Okay, so to coin my brother's term, rather than do form over substance, we would ask you to condition it. That, to me, if I were gonna allow this use, I would allow the solar, and this is obviously from my perspective, because it's just logical and it's good for the community. To allow the use without the solar is fine, but I think it benefits both parties to do the solar. So if you're able to do it, now I assume if you don't want the project at all, I understand. You
No,
vote-
no, I'm not saying that.
No, I know, I guess I'm trying to get to the point here. I understand where you're going with it. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to really draw the emphasis on, it makes sense to have solar. So if the board has the ability to do it by conditioning it, then we make that request. And that's within the board's purview. That's why I asked you the specific question, because we felt you couldn't do it. That's a different question. And I feel you can, you feel you can. Now it's whether or not the board wants it as a whole.
Right. So
Does that
I
make
think
sense?
I think that's the question,
Yeah.
is do we feel comfortable conditioning something when we don't have performance standards for it?
So again, now, I would refer back to my, if I was going to do a performance standard, and I would go back to my ground mount performance standards.
Okay.
Which are a lot more restrictive than what you're seeing here, okay? In other words, it's 100-foot setbacks, you're gonna have to do a cistern, 30,000-gallon cistern. You're gonna have to have a minimum of 6 acres, I think it is. These are all off the top of my head.
But what you're now doing, the reason why you can condition is because now you're taking, there's a reason why you do that for ground mount, because you don't want large fields with just eyesores sitting there, for lack of a better way to explain it.
And there's,
And-
go
and-
ahead.
So I guess I understand your logic in saying, okay, I want to go, but you're not required to do that. And it doesn't make sense to do that. It's really, I think, taking your bylaws and going backwards, because most communities are going forward, what they encourage. And in fact, the SMART program in Massachusetts encourages carports, rooftops like this, more so than fields, and discourages fields, unless it's on a brown field or something of that nature. So you're to interpret, and I understand wanting performance requirements. We have no issue with that, and we can even supply them to the board for recommendations from a third-party expert, so the board can condition those. We have no issue with that. We want it to perform, but the practical reality is that's the movement of both the state and federally making it easier to do commercially mount rooftops, because obviously it's better aesthetically for a community.
You'd like to think so, and there's some variation in that thinking, okay?
Agreed.
So I sat on the solar bylaw committee.
Yeah.
Okay, and we specifically ruled out roof mount,
Mhm.
okay? There was no option to that right now. So that's why I'm saying, if it's gonna be a push come to shove,
Mhm.
I'm going to rely back onto the established ground mount systems.
Mhm.
Okay, that's
Okay.
other.
But wouldn't you want to consider, I mean, if you have, the board has the power to condition. And I mean, I can understand, I appreciate what you're saying, but I would at least want to look at it and say, you know what, this makes sense. We have a procedure adopted here by the utilities or by whomever, and this is appropriate, because at the end of the day, this is my interpretation, both as someone who would be in a community and as a lawyer and as a developer, that we have a piece of property here that it's not lost on us at a significant location within the community. And I spent a lot of time talking about doing the house and everything like that. Sure, we can do it without the solar. The solar is an added benefit to the community as well. So if we do the solar, and you're talking, the reason why the requirements are so stringent on ground mount are much different. So we're taking requirements that are designed to prevent something completely different. What we would want is obviously to make of it, that if the storage facility went down, they were disposed of. You want to make sure that it's properly operated. You want to make sure your transmission, all the simple things you normally customarily would do with any solar, which are much less in degree. And there's a reason for that, because you don't have the same necessity. And I do recall actually when that whole committee went forward, I think we did a project before that came through. And I recognize it, but it's like any evolution, and there was a reason at that point it wasn't addressed. You don't have a lot of large scale rooftops anywhere in the community in Hampton. So I get why it didn't evolve. But when you have situations like this, why would the community, why would it not want to embrace it with a less restriction than a ground mount? And I'm not saying, obviously the board's gonna do what it wants to, but as a practical matter, let's assume that the board said, you know what, we really like your plan. We want to do the storage and everything. Well, the next step would be, let's find a way to do the solar. If at the end of the day, it doesn't do it, fine, we'll still go forward with the storage. I have to talk to my partners, I assume we would. I just think it's a loss for everybody, because there's no, unless I'm missing something, I'm sure y'all will tell me I'm here from opponents or the next day. There's no air quality, noise quality, aesthetic. There really is no item I can think of that would be adverse in having that on that system. That's all. And I respect what you're saying. I think you've thought it through, and I understand the logic and I understand the methodology.
Well, like I said, it was a committee of a group of people.
Yeah.
From the town residents. of the
No, you did a good job. I mean, I don't have an issue.
I'm
with it.
not sure we did or not, but again, as things keep moving ahead, things are evolving. Right now, we don't have roof mount solar.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to, I know, I want to hear some comments, okay, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no,
I-
not
I
at
will-
all. Thank you.
I will keep-
Thank you for the
I
time.
will keep it short with respect to this particular issue, and I'll sit down and let them continue. But I think that the board is perhaps being a little bit generous in offering to condition something that I think that I've just heard you indicate is otherwise prohibited. So
We definitely didn't offer, we would have to vote on something like that.
Right.
Of course, I'm advocating for a little bit more stringent reading of the regulations, but I certainly do agree with you that if for some reason the board decides to proceed, that the conditions for a large scale, whether it's couched as or characterized as roof mounted or ground mounted, would be the appropriate conditions, but I still think that that would be inappropriate. So
Point taken.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, real quick. Obviously, there's a lot of people here for this hearing, so I can speak for myself. When we go through this, we're gonna do our best to go by the book, item by item. Not looking, given the solar bylaw committee making the conscious decision not to set standards or permit large scale solar, I would be sticking my neck out on this particular project to do that. I mean, I think this is, obviously, there's a lot of opposition to this project. There was opposition to large scale roof mounted solar when the committee got together. Me personally, I would be, we need to try and do this as by the book as possible to avoid any sort of challenges.
I certainly understand that, and I think that's what I was conveying.
So where do we go from here?
Where does that leave us?
So with that said, the application right now includes a solar energy system. Would you request? I'm sorry.
No, it's all
I
right.
thought you were saying.
No, what I would suggest is that the board, and I understand the comments of the board member, and I understand your comments. If the board were to approve it, you approve it without, you make an amendment to your vote, and without the solar and the other components, and that's the vote.
Okay, so legally, and again, I'm not a lawyer,
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you have to
We don't have to withdraw or do anything. You
Withdraw
can
without
condition,
prejudice.
you can condition your approval. You can give us, you can say your hours of operation are, 7 to 7. You can say that we're allowing this without the solar mount. We're allowing this, we're allowing this only if you do it 24 feet across, where, your conditions, you can deal with all that under your conditions.
John, this was submitted with one application with 2 special permits anyways. They are submitted separately. And that's what it is.
I didn't realize.
That's what, remember at the beginning when I was saying, that's what I meant. I understand this is the body.
So you could treat them as 2 separate things under one umbrella.
Oh,
We specifically did from guidance from you guys.
oh. Okay, because all I have is, I have one. The application for a special permit. Is all one. So it was not two. It didn't.
If I may, if you look on the cover page,
Yeah, it's
they are
one,
separated as
it's one-
four,
Wait a minute.
they are separated. And the small print is 4 different applications, but in the narrative, it's all one run-on sentence. So that might be why it's confusing.
So what they're saying though is the applicable sections. Is that what you're saying, Heather?
I'm trying to understand it, yeah.
So those are the applicable sections. So if you were gonna do, in my simple mind, okay, please understand. If I was going to do that, I would have said, a new construction use 6.428, self-service, self-storage, and then 6.117, and then I would have done another one for the 6.25 solar energy system. That's how I would have done it. And again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a resident in the town that serves on the planning board. So I don't know how to handle it, to be honest with you. I go ahead.
Well, what I would suggest, and you just read it, your vote would be to approve 6.4.28 self-service storage facility, assuming this is what the board wants, and 6.117 within a watershed protection overlay. To deny, and then that's all you would approve. You wouldn't act on the other one, which deems it denied. Or you could even deny it and say, we deny 6.2, we make it a specific condition that we're not approving 6.25.2 solar energy. I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but I understand what you're trying to get to.
Right. I mean, an argument could be made that because only one permit application fee was paid, that there's just a request for one permit. I mean, so there are arguments on both sides here, I think.
Well, and I think respectfully, the bigger issue is the fact that I don't think that it could, I mean, it's a single permit from my simple mind. I am a lawyer, but I still have a simple mind. And I think that the bigger issue is the fact that to the extent that there's even any potential for consideration of this idea, it's clear that there is no basis for the board to consider that component of the application. And so it would seem to me that the application as a whole would need to be denied. But that's, again, just my simple mind. And I respectfully hear Mr. Pellegrino's position. I respect it. I just respectfully disagree with it.
Mr. Chairman, sounds like a very procedural type of issue. Have we come across it before? No.
We are, we're forging new ground every time we move forward sometimes. So I don't know exactly how to handle this. Go ahead.
Given
May
the,
I address the board?
No,
not at this point now, sorry, we're trying to, there'll be time for questions from the audience. We're trying to get the applicants to provide their narrative. We're trying to work through this issue to see if we have to go any further tonight. There will be time for other folks to.
This wasn't a comment. I'm not, I raised my hand because it's not a comment. It's not what I'm here to talk about. But I do believe that town council could answer this question. And
well, that's where we're going with this, Connie, to be honest with you.
Just
I may have to defer to town council. I'm going.
Mr. Chairman, I
Go ahead.
honestly, I can see the argument of only one special permit. That's the argument and this isn't anything to discredit the applicants, but that's the argument that's ringing true in my head, is that there was only one special permit fee paid, correct? And only one out of.
Put it on me. Yep.
No, I
got one check.
want to make sure that that's.
Yes,
So
that's it.
honestly, to avoid challenge.
No, what's one?
Yeah, if it's one application and one check, despite the fact that it's got multiple applicable sections of the zoning bylaw, I mean, I think the cleanest thing would be to have a withdraw and resubmit to avoid, going through months of hearings to then get it challenged in court.
Yeah, but if it's like oftentimes you put a question, there's multiple things that it comes under. And the boards always act and say, we approve this, we don't approve this part, and you pass it with such. Look at it does, it's not gonna be any, let's assume hypothetically, the board approved just the storage and not the solar, and that was it. and a group wanted to challenge to go file suit. The town's not caught up in it. The court decides it and they make a decision if it's right or wrong. And we're the ones who run that risk, not the board.
Respectfully, I would argue that that's not true. The town would be named as a party in that suit and would incur expense along with the townspeople who were required to challenge it, which is, not fair.
I've been to summons too many times sitting on this board, so that's why I'm acting a little hesitant. And I didn't see anything, John. Yeah.
There's a second.
There it is.
Mr. Chairman, on page 135.
Yep. Decision.
Mhm.
That's the.
Seven, yeah, extensions, modifications, or removals of special permit shall follow the same procedures as are required for the original granting of a special permit. 135, 783.
And then on page 136, Mr. Chairman, 8A, approval subject to conditions, modifications, and restrictions which will ensure that the project meets the standards and criteria in this bylaw.
Mr. Chair, maybe I can offer an alternative that might obviate this issue. So we can withdraw our request for the solar. So the only thing before the board is the rest of the application. And you always have the right to do with permission of the board.
You would have to vote. They'll.
John, you were on the planning board for 15 years. And any insight?
We've allowed that type of change, subdivision plan, this is kind of a different thing. I go back to John, perhaps town council, it's always good to have another lawyer. Except, I mean,
Not really.
So why don't we want to do a continuation? Yeah. Would you be open to a continuation on the hearing?
Yeah, I mean, look, we obviously want it to be done right as well. If you're gonna submit it to town council, I would submit it on both issues. One, is the board allowed to vote on it in a pass portion of it, not the other portion? Two, is the board allowed to accept an amendment from the applicant to withdraw a portion of it? And then, we can address it from there. I think that's fair.
And
I mean, we don't want the board to go down territory that they don't feel the authority, nor do we want there to be unnecessary litigation afterwards, because it's kind of like for everybody, most especially us, because we have to pay out the property.
And again, our concerns is that the townspeople are paying for the representation to deal with this and then continuing to deal with it and continuing to deal with it. And so respectfully, I think the case law is very, very clear that the board has discretion to deny a permit that they have concerns with on any legally tenable ground. So unless it's for an arbitrary or capricious reason, in other words, I don't like Mr. Pellegrino because he has blonde hair or blue eyes, the board has absolute discretion to deny that permit. And I use that as a funny example, but at the end of the day, the point is still the same, which is the board has absolute discretion to deny a permit, even if it's fully permissible, even if it meets all of the design criteria, if there is a legally tenable ground. And at this point, it appears to me that there is legally tenable grounds for a vote and to deny the permit.
And not to belabor the point, obviously the board likewise has the authority to accept, to request a continuance. The only person who could object to it is the applicant, and we're acquiescing to it in the interest of all parties. And remember, the applicant's also a taxpayer of the citizen. of the resident, of the citizen.
Yeah, to the town. I'm of the notion to request a continuance myself, okay? I'd like to continue this. I'd like to get a legal from town council.
Mr. Chairman, I move that, I'm in agreement as well. I don't want to move forward and make a decision on something I'm not qualified to decide or not. I would move, and, obviously for discussion here, I would move that we look to continue this hearing to an agreement, I'm making this motion just so the board can discuss this, but I would move that that the board vote to continue this hearing should the motion pass. We can come up with a future date.
Okay. Do I hear a second for discussion to get another date and continue this hearing at another date? Second, all in favor?
Oh, we should have a discussion first.
Well, we don't, we
will.
can.
It's seconded for discussion, and then once we discuss.
No, because when it's not public notice.
No, we're just,
It's seconded. for
We're gonna do it right
discussion.
now?
Yes.
Okay, I
It's
thought you were
seconded.
saying to be
No,
in
no,
the
no,
future.
it's seconded
That
for
would work.
discussion.
Okay.
John, we're gonna discuss.
yes. So we made a motion. It's
Made
been
it seconded discussion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so let's discuss.
I am not getting a clear picture reading this as to what the intent is here.
So that's why we'd like to go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it would be wisest to get counsel.
Town council. So. I think Jason, you're.
Yeah, no discussion. Other discussion as well. Pick a date.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I get it. That one. So we'd all like to get together again.
May I ask, Mr. Chairman, is this to discuss, continue the entire discussion or just this one issue?
What we're looking for is well, we want to continue the hearing so we can get an opinion from our town council as to how to handle the,
So we would stop today's hearing now.
pardon me?
We would start today's public hearing now.
We don't stop it, we'll continue.
We'll
And
continue.
that's what we're talking about. What date?
We would adjourn.
We would adjourn,
We would
okay.
continue.
All right, so we could continue with other matters today pending this.
Right, unless you'd like to.
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering, I mean, it's only 20 minutes to 8. Are there other issues that we could use this time for?
That's just what you're saying.
I just, Mr. Chairman, if I could offer a suggestion. We would, from my perspective, we have very clear grounds substantively beyond the solar to get to a point where we can ask the board to vote tonight. And we feel that we can give the board sufficient reasons to deny the entire permit. And so if we will be willing to table this solar issue for now and let the applicants continue with their presentation. And then we have our points to make our counterpoints to the entire application. And then the board is left in a position where they can vote and they can make a decision to deny the permit in its entirety this evening, which would be an economical consideration for our clients who continue to suffer from these continuations and things like that, which would obviate the issue about the solar permit if the rest of the permit was subject to denial for other valid reasons, which we feel that we can present.
I wouldn't be opposed to withdrawing my motion. If the general consensus is that we continue deliberating.
Okay, Counselor,
Well,
go ahead.
we're gonna go through something which may have been exercise in futility, and then we're gonna come back and have to do it all over again, depending on more town council. To me, it's not a prudent move of anybody's time to continue now, when there's this, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're saying this is preemptive issue that makes it dispositive. So, but we're gonna have a hearing on something that's dispositive. I mean, you're bifurcating, and I think you're setting yourself up for appeal, because if you were to vote against it, then we'd probably come back and say the issue was clouded because of the solar issue. So I'm just trying to be very frank. We're trying to be cooperative and let the opposition have their day. We don't have any problem with that. But if you want to run it today and continue it till we get the hearing, and then continue the hearing after that, fine. I mean, that's fine. That's the board's purview. I'm just trying to play it out the way I see it. And we're happy to, however you want to do it as a board, we're fine.
And we're trying to be as cooperative as possible as well. I mean, we're not pressuring the board to do anything in particular. We're just trying to be mindful of the efficiency of everybody's time. And we also think that it's very clear that the permit, the entire application, should be denied for substantive reasons. And once those reasons are enunciated by the board, as long as they have any tenable ground for denying the permit, there is no appeal that will be successful.
No matter what, this board has to do its due diligence. Okay. How we proceed forward? Are we going down a pathway that is opens us up to more litigation? And my feeling is that I think we need to get town council's view, their opinion on this matter. And once that once that opinion from town council and the recommendation as to which way we should go, at that point in time, when we meet again, we can set a path of which way we want to go. I think in respect to the applicant, they may have to change some prints. They may have to do some variation of their layout. Don't know, but depending on what transpires with our town council, I'm not comfortable moving forward at this time. Do you understand?
Yes,
Heather?
yes, I
So,
understand. I mean, after the discussion, it sounds like that decision has to be made. Otherwise, we are potentially wasting the effort and the time that may need to be redone again.
correct.
Right, yeah,
So
I get it.
there may be some changes if
Right.
we hear evidence or things of this nature,
Yeah.
okay?
We
Yes, Counselor.
we respect that.
Okay,
We respect that.
thank you.
We have no objection.
And again, I hope everybody understands, I've got a couple of selectmen right here, and I don't mean to spend the town's money but I want to try and keep us from more litigation, okay? Meaning that I need your approval of that.
Respectfully, just one more quick point is if we could try to work towards an agreed upon framing of the issue for town council, that I would suggest would be ideal if we can come to some agreement. If not, then the board's version would obviously govern, but I would just suggest that there be some discussion as to the framing of that issues. And
again, I'm not a lawyer. The question at hand happens to be the application And is it viable to be able to keep moving forward without with just a simple change to the application? Or do we have to,
Withdraw and resubmit.
Yes, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that council, and we assume the touch base with council, we could probably work that on a very short order.
I would think yes, I would think town council would be open to receptive to listening to.
Thank you.
So that's kind of where I'm going with that. Okay. Don't ask me to repeat it. All right. So I think that brings us back to a date.
Mr. Chairman, is this something we could do on our regularly scheduled meeting on the 13th?
That wasn't a good date last night.
I apologize.
I know, that's a, I
I do apologize.
That's right.
It was a pre.
So sorry.
No, 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 not at all, not at all.
So I'm going to explain some of the limitations we have going forward, okay? I'm not sure. We've got one on the 14th, if you will.
Correct.
I'm not sure it'll be resolved by the 6th of October, which is a Wednesday.
I won't be here.
That's right, you're traveling.
I would be fine with the 12th. That was the day that the opposing counsel on the other project was not available, but it seemed like it was available for other
Okay.
people.
So you might as well set up 10 minutes. And again, I'm going to explain another, the third Wednesday of the month. This room is reserved for conservation, so that's one of the issues, okay? So that being said, I'm going to ask the applicant. I know he's probably looking through his calendar. You're looking through your calendar.
Well, I'm just waiting here with date.
Okay,
It's either the 12th
The 12th.
or we go to.
Well, that's fine.
First.
Is that Columbus Day?
No, it's the day after.
Yeah.
6:15 on the 12th of October.
So now we have to amend my motion to continue the hearing until 6:15 PM on October 12th.
Seconded. All in favor for 6:15? Again, I apologize. Okay. 6:15.
You need to get a written continuance. You need to get a written continuance with the applicant for that. Oh,
I got it.
Yes, we got it. I have to.
Mr. Chairman, I would grab the floor in that area. I'd really like to thank everybody for letting us get through this.
Thank
I think it went a lot better than previous ones, so thank you very much, everybody.
Save our time.
Thank you.
I gotta have to sign it. I gotta close the meeting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.